Blessings, namaste, and love, everyone. I'm spiritualist, psychic astrologer, and medium Sette. Once again, I thank you for this opportunity to allow me to share with you my astrological and spiritual insights for the month of June 2022. Certainly, we are progressing very, very quickly through yet another unprecedented year. Now, we begin June with a Mercury retrograde. Remember, and keep in mind, Mercury has been retrograde since May 10th. It will move direct on June 3rd. The exact time of that is 4 o'clock a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And keep in mind, as I have mentioned in previous videos, that not until Mercury moves past the point at which it moved retrograde are we not completely out of the retrograde influences, and that will be on June 18th. After June 18th, we are completely out of the energies of the Mercury retrograde. Mercury began its retrograde in the sign of Gemini. It dipped back into Taurus for a little bit, and it will complete the retrograde in Gemini. And as I have always suggested to recognize, all planetary phenomena, even a Mercury retrograde, does serve a greater purpose when we understand how to properly employ the energies. All of these experiences are tools for us to employ, embrace, so to create our realities and to enjoy this human experience. This specific Mercury retrograde, since it began in the sign of Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury, the planet of communications, thoughts, words, certainly the confusion may have seemed a little bit more so during this Mercury retrograde, and I believe I also emphasized in my last video that this Mercury retrograde is an auspicious opportunity to recognize the power of the mind. Remember, we create our realities through the creative process of thought, word, and deed. Thoughts and words are Gemini Mercury elements. So this Mercury retrograde was and is an opportunity to embrace and become very aware of the power of the mind and the power of our words. Remember, I think I've mentioned this before, there's a reason as to why vocabulary is referred to as spelling, because with words we cast spells. Let us recognize to be very aware of being very mindful of speaking our truth, being in alignment with our thoughts, that the thoughts are in alignment, in congruency with our words, and to be very aware, to be very clear with what we speak, what we intend, and to mean all that we intend to say. And when we become much more in alignment, or rather when our thoughts become in alignment with our words and our actions, then certainly we begin to create experiences that we truly desire. And sometimes when we're not aware of the imbalances and the discrepancies which may take place between thoughts and words, do we miscreate our realities? Meaning that sometimes we are not aware how we bring something to form that we may not necessarily desire or choose to experience. I believe it was in chapter 3 of my book, The Planets Align So Rare, I illustrated that if we allowed ourselves and we embraced the courage to recognize every thought that we experience during any given day, we could see exactly, we would become very aware exactly how we create our realities. And as I said, this Mercury retrograde is a very auspicious opportunity to embrace and recognize the power of the mind as well as the spoken word. Mercury is retrograde until June 3rd, and we are completely out of the retrograde phase at June 18th, after Mercury moves past the point at which it changed directions. On June 14th, we have our next full moon, and that full moon is in the sign of Sagittarius. The sun is in the sign of Gemini, the moon is in the sign of Sagittarius. At a full moon, the sun and the moon are at opposite ends of one another. As I just mentioned, Gemini represents thoughts, words, communications. Sagittarius connects and represents, it connects us with the higher mind and the higher self. The higher mind, the higher self, that's that part of us that exists outside of the third dimension that we are connected with through this etheric umbilical cord. Certainly I keep these explanations very, very simple because sometimes we don't have complete, this platform isn't always a suitable place for us to elaborate on certain elements that we share. As I said, the Sagittarius connects with the higher mind. This full moon, it's such an important opportunity for us to receive guidance that comes through our higher self, from the higher realms, from spirit, from higher evolved beings. Sagittarius also represents highly evolved beings. Some may refer to them as angels, others know them to be as extraterrestrials. These are our spirit guides, if you will, the elements that dwell in the higher realms and the higher kingdoms that are available to everyone, to all of us, for guidance, to receive wisdom, clarity, and understanding. This coming full moon on June 14th is such an auspicious opportunity to receive so much information from the higher realms. Now, at this full moon, we have a square alignment. That's a 90-degree alignment from Neptune to both the sun and the moon. That forms what we refer to as a T-square alignment. The sun and moons are at opposite ends of one another, and Neptune is right in the middle there. So it forms a 90-degree alignment with the sun and the moon. That energy represents change. It's also a creative aspect, alignment. It is connected to the energies of Mars. Squares present times of growth, times of change. Now with Neptune, I've always emphasized that whenever Neptune is prominent in a chart, we have to be very aware how to properly employ its energy. When we are not working adequately with Neptune, it presents situations of confusion, doubt, uncertainty, misinformation. So obviously the element of misinformation may run rampant in the outside world from the lower dimensions. Neptune represents the connection with the spirit realm and the higher realms. So to properly work with Neptune, we need to allow ourselves to go within, become very, very quiet, and receive that clarity from spirit. Since Neptune is very much a higher vibrational, fourth, fifth, sixth, higher dimensional element, if we endeavor upon working with Neptune from the lower realms, as in the third dimension, that's where the confusion comes into play. So as I said, all planetary energies and elements are designed to serve a greater purpose for us when we properly understand how to use its dynamic. As I said, with Neptune, it is so important to be very aware, especially when Neptune has a strong placement in our charts, whether personally or globally. It is suggested that we become even more dedicated towards going within, quieting the mind, anchoring ourselves to the earth energy, clearing our etheric field so that we receive clarity, not confusion, from the higher realms. And because Neptune so much represents spirit and the spiritual realm, when we're working with Neptune, we have to anchor and ground ourselves to the earth energies. And because we are still in this third dimensional experience, even though we are progressing through the third, the fourth, to the higher fifth dimension. We still contend with the density and matter of the third dimension, so that is why we need to be very aware to anchor and ground ourselves and clear our being when we are working with such a high vibrational spiritual element as Neptune. Through, especially around the time of the full moon, imbalanced psychic energy can be extremely imbalanced and discordant in the outside world. And remember, as long as we are aware of the presence of certain lower vibrational experiences, we always have the opportunity to shield and protect ourselves against anything discordant which may be generating through the outside world, from the outside world through the lower dimensions. So, as always, allow yourself to be very dedicated to your spiritual self-care, especially around the time of the full moon on June 14th. Neptune in the chart is somewhat elevated, and it is located in the sector of the chart that represents the higher mind and the higher self, which is the sector of the chart, the ninth house sector, which is connected to Sagittarius. So certainly we are very much being guided from the higher realms, from spirit, highly evolved beings, the angels, extraterrestrials, whatever that might be, so that we may be properly guided and that we may receive great clarity specifically to what is occurring in the outside world. Even though Neptune, when it's not employed properly, it can present situations of confusion, and Neptune shall always bring great clarity. Again, when we understand how to properly work with the energy. If we're trying to figure things out with Neptune from the lower dimensions, that's where the confusion comes to play. When we work with spirit and we anchor and ground ourselves and quiet the mind through modalities such as meditation, that's when Neptune brings great clarity. Certainly there's so much confusion in the outside world right now, and this full moon may certainly be a time for many, many people to receive abundant clarity. On June 21st, we have the summer solstice. The sun moves into the sign of Cancer. It is a cardinal sign. The cardinal signs begin the seasons on June 21st at 5:14, almost 5:14 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That's when the sun moves into the sign of Cancer. In the northern hemisphere, we have the summer solstice. In the southern hemisphere, we have the winter solstice. As the sun moves through the sign of Cancer, Cancer represents, among many things, our home environment, our emotions, the connections that we have with our mothers and mother figures in our lives. It also represents the emotional foundations that are within ourselves that many times, if not all times, are established in our early years. As the sun transits the sign of Cancer, certainly we dedicate our awareness towards establishing emotional wellness. Perhaps also embrace some courage if there are discordant emotions which we may encounter and we may experience. Also, it is very much a time for us to create our homes into sanctuaries. I've discussed many, many times how the home that we suggest for all of us to create our homes to be our sanctuaries, our sacred place of dwelling where we can relax, rejuvenate, replenish, quiet the mind. The home is very much intended to be a sanctuary, just as sanctified as any church, cathedral, mosque, or temple. So as the sun transits the sign of Cancer, certainly, if it resonates with you, dedicate this time to creating wellness, especially emotional wellness, in your homes. Also, I've suggested in the past to recognize that whatever manifests itself within the home is a direct reflection of the energy that is dwelling in the home. And when there are discordant energies present in the home, that's when we have experiences in our home that are not necessarily favorable. So this is a time to reflect on these subjects and to create any imbalances energetically which may take place in the home, which the coming new moon that is on June 28th, it is in the sign of Cancer, is the perfect opportunity to really infuse this wellness into your home. Now, as I've touched upon in previous videos, we have, before the new moon, we have the balsamic moon. That's the period of the dark moon. That's the last phase of the moon leading up to the new moon. That's the dark moon phase. That's the opportunity to clear and cleanse away and to adequately prepare for the coming lunar cycle. The balsamic moon phase begins in June, on June 24th at 8:10 p.m. That's the time of preparation for the coming new moon. So if you are observing that there are experiences of discordant energies in the home, as well as perhaps clutter in the home, it's time to clear it all away. Clear away, and just release anything in your home, energetically or otherwise, which is not serving a greater purpose for you and is not allowing you to enjoy and create peace, harmony, wellness, and balance, spiritual wellness and balance in your homes. Also remember that objects have vibrational frequencies. Many times old artifacts such as antiques sometimes do emanate a lower vibrational frequency because the objects do absorb the energies of their owners. And many times antiques are come from estates. Now, it doesn't mean that every antique is going to have a low vibrational frequency connected to it, but some do. And if you are observing that you're finding these experiences, it can always be corrected. So perhaps dedicate time at the balsamic moon to review what's in your home, not only energetically but also the physical objects in your home. And if there's anything that just you're not feeling right about, that doesn't resonate with you, allow yourself the courage to let go of it, break away from it, move past it. And at the time of the new moon, which is on June 28th at 10:52 p.m. at that moment, infuse high vibrational frequency into your home. I personally, what resonates with me is lighting candles at the exact moment of a certain experience, like as is the case with a new moon. So perhaps if it resonates with you, infuse a white candle, which white represents purity. At the time of the new moon, light that candle at the time of the new moon, just to really infuse that energy into your homes. So once again, I thank you for allowing me this opportunity to share with you some of the astrological and spiritual insights and energies of the month of June 2022. We are progressing so very, very quickly through this year. Enjoy the summer months. Keep yourself grounded and protected. Quite often we enjoy time by the ocean on the beach during the summer months. The salt water is so very clearing, cleansing, and grounding. Even just being around salt water clears away the discordant particles of energy that sometimes accumulate in our auric fields. The negative ions that are generated around salt water is very cleansing to the human aura, and it certainly assists us in our spiritual wellness experiences. Once again, thank you for this opportunity. Stay in the light and always in a place of love. Many blessings.